working a night shift can be a monotonous and quiet experience, but for a security guard at a small startup company, the quiet night turned into a terrifying encounter with an unknown intruder. The guard had taken up a simple job at a small company, where his sole responsibility was to monitor security cameras and ensure the building remained secure overnight. The office was small and unassuming, with only a few rooms, making the job seem relatively easy. However, it was a job that quickly became much more unnerving than expected. The office was equipped with a basic security system, with only outdoor cameras that provided low-quality footage. The guard's shift began at 9 p.m., and the first few hours were uneventful. He sat in a small security room, watching the camera screens, half expecting the night to pass without incident. However, around 1 a.m., something strange occurred. He heard what sounded like a latch clicking shut, followed by a faint noise. Perplexed, he stood up, walked out into the hallway, and found everything to be exactly as he had left it. The 3 doors down the hallway were closed, and the rooms behind them appeared undisturbed. The guard didn't think much of the sound at first, dismissing it as a minor mistake or his imagination. After all, the security system had not triggered an alarm, which would indicate that someone had entered the building. He went back to his seat, keeping the door to the hallway slightly ajar so that he could hear any unusual sounds more clearly. As he resumed monitoring the cameras, he double-checked the footage from the last few minutes, only to find that there was nothing out of the ordinary. No movement outside, no signs of any intruder. Minutes turned into an hour, and the guard began to relax, convinced that the noise was just a random, unexplained occurrence. But then, another sound echoed down the hallway, a door opening slowly, just as he had heard earlier. This time, the noise was unmistakable. His heart raced, and he jumped out of his chair, rushing into the hallway. As he approached the first door, he saw that one of the doors was cracked open. The security alarms hadn't gone off, and there was no evidence of anyone entering the building through the cameras. He was puzzled, but his instincts told him something wasn't right. The guard cautiously opened the door wider, revealing a dark office room. As he stepped inside, he didn't see anything immediately, but he felt an odd sense of dread. His footsteps echoed in the empty space as he walked past rows of office desks, trying to make sense of the situation. Everything seemed normal until he reached the back of the room. There on the wall, he noticed the faintest movement, a shadow, just at the corner of his eye. Turning his head quickly, the guard froze. There, crouched underneath one of the desks, was a man. His black hair was messy, and his face was gaunt, with large dark circles under his eyes. The man's expression was a combination of fear and anger, as if he had been caught off guard and was furious about it. For a moment neither of them moved, but the instant their eyes met, the man began to rise. The guard's mind raced. He had no idea whether the intruder was armed, and he wasn't about to take any chances. His fight-or-flight instinct kicked in, and he bolted down the hallway, running for his life. In the chaos, the guard managed to escape the building, triggering the security alarms as he ran out the front doors. The police were notified, and the guard waited outside, trying to keep an eye on the entrance. Less than a minute later, the door swung open, and the intruder sprinted out. The man ran around the back of the building, disappearing from sight. When the police arrived, they reviewed the footage from the night, hoping to get more clarity on the situation. But strangely, there was no sign of the man entering the building. There was no footage of him breaking in, or even approaching the doors. The company's security systems hadn't recorded anything unusual. The police were baffled, and so was the guard. How had the man gotten inside? Was he a former employee? The company insisted that they had no idea who the man was or what he wanted. Nothing seemed to have been stolen, and the building was otherwise undisturbed. The guard had a suspicion that the company might have known more than they were letting on, especially since hiring security for such a small office seemed unnecessary, unless there was something they weren't saying. The incident left the guard deeply unsettled, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. After several months, he left the job for a new opportunity, but the mystery of that night stayed with him. He never found out the truth about the intruder, and the case remained unsolved. In conclusion, the night shift at the small startup office turned into a terrifying experience that would stay with the security guard forever. The unsettling events, hearing strange noises, encountering an unknown intruder, and the unexplained entry, raised questions that went unanswered. It was a chilling reminder of how something as seemingly mundane as a night shift can suddenly turn into a nightmare. The setting of this chilling story is a part-time pizza delivery job during the holiday season, specifically the day after Christmas. The protagonist, a young person working at a busy pizza shop in their town, is tasked with delivering a pizza to a remote house. Although the day seemed quiet at first, the reality of the night quickly spirals into a terrifying experience. What begins as an ordinary delivery shift turns into a nightmare as the protagonist encounters a situation that feels increasingly unnatural and dangerous. The story begins with the protagonist receiving a delivery order for a single pizza, which needs to be delivered to a house located 20 minutes away. At first glance, the house seems out of place. It's situated off the main road, isolated from other homes. The driveway is long and covered with snow, and the house is surrounded by thick trees. The outdoor area is covered in Christmas decorations, giving the house a festive appearance. However, one notable detail stands out. The driveway hasn't been plowed, making it difficult to park without risking getting stuck in the snow. Despite this, the delivery person does their best to park and approach the house, noticing that all the lights and decorations outside are functioning. When the protagonist walks toward the porch to knock on the door, they observe fresh shoe prints in the snow, which would typically indicate the presence of people inside. However, as they approach the door, they realize that something is wrong. The shoe prints do not lead directly to the door, but instead veer off to the side, creating an eerie sense of unease. Ignoring the unsettling detail, the protagonist proceeds to knock on the door, expecting the residents to answer. But to their surprise, there is no response. The house is unnervingly quiet. After a second and third round of knocking, still with no answer, the delivery person starts to feel more frustrated and cold. At this point, they double-check the order slip to ensure that they have the correct address and payment details. The lack of response makes the situation feel increasingly odd, but the protagonist, thinking the residents might be busy or not hearing the knocks, is reluctant to leave. As frustration builds, the protagonist decides to try one final loud knock, hoping to get the attention of anyone inside. But this time, a chilling shift occurs. As they stand there, desperately waiting for an answer, the protagonist notices something strange. A person suddenly appears outside the house. The figure is fully bundled in winter clothing, including boots, a jacket, and snow pants. This person does not acknowledge the protagonist, but begins walking slowly toward the delivery person's car. At first, the protagonist assumes the person is simply another resident of the house. But as the person approaches with deliberate slowness, an uneasy feeling takes hold. The protagonist realizes that something is not right. The pace of the figure's approach suggests an unnerving confidence, almost as though they know the delivery person is trapped in their car and cannot leave. The protagonist immediately gets back into their car, attempting to start the engine, but it won't start. The car's engine keeps stalling, which adds to the growing tension. As the person continues to walk towards the car, the protagonist begins to panic. A sense of imminent danger is overwhelming as the person outside now reaches the car and starts to approach the window. In a moment of desperation, the protagonist dials 911 for help, explaining the situation to the operator. But the situation becomes even more unnerving when the stranger, standing just outside the car window, starts speaking in a low, deep voice, asking if the protagonist needs help. The manner in which the figure speaks suggests that they are fully aware of the protagonist's vulnerable position in the car. The delivery person's anxiety peaks as the stranger becomes more impatient, moving erratically and trying to break into the car. The protagonist can see the figure's hands searching pockets for something, and the fear of a possible weapon being drawn makes the situation even more terrifying. In a split second, the stranger punches the car window several times, trying to break it. But suddenly, as if realizing the situation is escalating too quickly, the figure turns and runs back around the side of the house. Relieved but still fearful, the protagonist watches as the figure disappears from view. But their relief is short-lived, as a few moments later, the flashing blue and red lights of a police car appear in the rearview mirror. The police arrive just in time to scare the strange figure away. In the aftermath of the encounter, the protagonist learns the horrifying truth. The house's owners were away for the holidays. The decorations and lights were plugged in and powered by the stranger, who had tampered with the car's ignition to prevent it from starting. The man's actions reveal his sinister intent, most likely to kidnap the delivery person. However, luck intervened, either due to the stranger losing his tool or some other factor, that prevented the situation from escalating further. The protagonist never delivered pizzas again after that night. This story is a stark reminder of how the smallest of details, such as the way someone behaves, or the sense that something isn't quite right, can be crucial in determining potential danger. The protagonist's initial sense of unease and subsequent actions to escape danger ultimately saved them from what might have been a much darker fate.